Okay. I'm going to hopefully not get interrupted again this time. And if I do, I do. But we're going to talk about the end of Napoleon. Now, one thing I want to talk to you guys about on this one is that this PowerPoint will look a little bit different than the PowerPoints that are in Canvas. It's the same basic information. It just looks a little bit different. Miss Brewer, my co-teacher for the rest of the 9 weeks, she was teaching this unit, and so we put her PowerPoints in there. But it's the same information. I just used my PowerPoints on this just because this is the material that I've used for the past 2 or 3 years, and it's just ones that I'm used to more. So on the last one, I kind of got interrupted a little bit, so I'm going to go back and just make sure that we understand that Napoleon was trying to defeat Britain. He couldn't defeat them by a war, so he was going to try to defeat them economically, and this was the continental system. And basically, the continental system was that Britain could not trade with any of these countries that he had defeated, which was Prussia, Austria, and Russia. And this was an idea that he said that they would not be able to trade with Britain. Britain couldn't trade with them. They couldn't trade with Britain because he felt like this would weaken Britain economically, and then they wouldn't have money to wage wars. And all this did was create money for Britain. Britain was able to go and trade in other places and made them extremely rich. So the continental system will fail because all of these other countries will cheat. They'll say, Napoleon, you can't keep us from doing that. You can't watch us 24 hours a day. You can't keep us from doing this. And then they'll just flat out refuse to do it. And so Napoleon thinks he's got to make a point. He's got to show his strength. And so he decides to show his strength in a very weird way. He's going to decide to show his strength against Russia. Um, the other countries had kind of refused to be in the continental system also, but Russia did also. And for whatever reason, he's decided that he's going to make his point against Russia more so than any other country. So Russia refused to remain in the continental system, and Napoleon did not want to appear weak. He had to appear strong. He had to show that he was not going to let Russia take advantage of him. He had to show his advantage. He had to prove that he was the emperor. He was going to be the conqueror of the world. So it left him little choice but to evade. He knew there were risks involved, but he also knew that if he allowed Russia to challenge him, it would open up the doors for all these other countries to challenge him. So in June of 1812, he took a grand army of over 600,000 men to Russia. But now here's the thing. When we talk about 600,000 men, that's just the troops. You got to imagine he's got horses. He's got animals for slaughter. He's got animals to take these supplies with him. He's got to take food for the men. He's got to take food for all the animals. You've got to take men to handle all the animals. You've got to take weapons. You've got to take other supplies. So more than likely, we're looking at well over 1 million people that he has traveling with him to Russia. And so this is a massive, massive amount of people going. Now, here's something about Napoleon that today we're going to give him a little bit of a break on. He didn't have a weather map. He didn't have an app on his phone that he's able to look up and say, hey, Siri, what's the weather going to be like in Russia? And Miss Brewer's phone went, hey, when I said that. They're not going to know what the weather's like. And, you can say, hey, it's going to be cold in Russia. And you can be told that. But France's weather is very similar to our weather. Don't get a lot of snow, doesn't get very cold. And so you can be told, hey, Napoleon, you might want to plan for it to be like negative 15 degrees and snow up to your knees. But you can't imagine that if you've never seen it. So he's going to be very ill prepared, clothes wise, food wise, for this. Okay. And plus, we're going in June. So it's not that cold in June. And he's thinking, I can end this quickly and get back out before it gets to this, imaginary cold that I've never heard about. So all of these people enter into Russia, and he's hoping for a very quick defeat. But he can't also, this is the second thing that we have to give him just a little bit of a patience on. There's no way that we can understand the level of crazy that he's about to hit with Russia. The Russian forces refuse to give battle. They refuse to fight. Instead, they retreat. They just leave. And as they leave, they make him follow them deeper and deeper into Russia. And as they are retreating into Russia, they're burning everything in their path. The Russian army is. They're burning their crops, they're burning their villages. And so listen to this. They're not burning it. They're burning it so his people can't get it, but they're also burning it against their own people. So they're keeping it from being able, from their Napoleon's army from finding food, but they're also burning it, and their own people aren't being able to grow crops anymore or have food. Now, for the most part, some of their people, some of these villagers are going with the Russian army, or they're moving to another village that's not in the path of Napoleon. So for the most part, most of these villagers are not starving to death, but the Russian army doesn't care. They only care that Napoleon can't get it. So, I mean, you can't anticipate that level of crazy. This is called scorched earth policy. Now, Napoleon would have known about scorched earth policy, but you do that against another army. Like Napoleon would have done that against Russia. You don't do that to your own people. The Russians will finally stop at a town called Borodino, and it's a bloody, bloody battle. And they are defeated there. But they don't finish, they're not done. They keep retreating, and they keep moving Napoleon deeper and deeper into Russia. And they get him into the city of Moscow, which is kind of right in the middle, deep into Russia. At this point, it's October. It's cold, it's snowy, and they have set the entire city of Moscow on fire. And Napoleon's just sitting there going, what the heck? Are you crazy? The answer would be yes. So Napoleon and his army have no supplies, they have no food. So they have to abandon. And so they begin what's called the Great Retreat back across Russia, trying to get back into France. This retreat will proceed in terrible winter conditions. And this is what I'm talking about. They were planning to be gone before now. So they don't have shoes for this. They don't have clothes for this. And they certainly now don't have food for it. As they're moving through France, a lot of men they will just like leave the army. Some of them die, but some of them just leave. We don't really know if they get out alive or not. But only 40,000 of the original 600,000 make it back into France, Poland, and then France by January 1813. The military disaster will allow Napoleon's enemies to rise up against him, attack the army. Paris will be captured in March of 1814, and then he is exiled to an island called Elba off the coast of Tuscany, and it's kind of like off the coast of Italy, between the island where he was born and then Italy. So he's exiled there. And so we put, because this went so well the first time, we put Louis XVI brother back on the throne. We put the Bourbon monarchy back on the throne. It's another King Louis the 18th. We skipped Louis the 17th, remember, because that would have been Louis's son who died in prison. So we have a new Louis on the throne, Louis the 18th. He's about as incompetent as his brother. And it gets back to Napoleon on Elba, that there's turmoil in France, surprise, that the new leadership is incompetent, surprise. He's bored, and so he escapes. And he gets into Paris and he picks up supporters on his way, and he's able to slip back into France, and he's able to get back into Paris. And, Paris troops hear about him coming back. The Bourbon monarchy hears about him coming back into France, and they send troops to meet him and to capture him. And he literally meets them at the gate, kind of like a standoff. And he's like, "Would you shoot your emperor?" And, they kind of like, "No, come on in, round two." He's able to convince them to support him again. And so he comes in and they take the Bourbon monarchy off the throne, and he's back in as emperor. So the enemies of his, they pledged to fight and destroy him, but he's able to raise another army. And this time he goes to a town in Belgium called Waterloo. And he is ready to fight a battle with Britain, finally, the Duke of Wellington. This is where Miss Brewer's notes are excellent on this. And I'm not going to pull those up. You can look at them. But she talks about in her notes that they have, he has 30,000 troops. Anyway, he has more troops than the Duke of Wellington, starting out with. And but he waits. The battlefield is muddy, and he wants to wait and let it get dry, because he wants to put his, he's a military strategist, and it's like putting your little toy soldiers in spots, and he's also a chess player. And so he wants to make sure that his cannons are in the right spot, and all of his artillery is in the right spot, and his soldiers are in the right spot. So he wants to wait and make sure that the battlefield is dried out. Well, while he's doing that, 30,000 extra troops comes in to help the Duke of Wellington, and he's overpowered at that point, and it is a bloody, bloody defeat that he suffers under the Duke of Wellington. From all reports, he rides away from the battle in tears, because he knows that he's over. It's done. He will never be able to gain support from France, from his supporters in France again. This was too much of a defeat, a battle. At this time, his allies turn him over. They gathered him together, and they exiled him to an island in off of the coast of Africa called St. Helena. And Miss Brewer in her notes talks about it took 10 weeks to get there. He is guarded night and day, and so he cannot escape again. While he's there, he starts kind of to write his memoirs. He is, he's despondent. He feels like he is a failure, that history won't remember him, which we do. We remember him for a lot of things. When he dies, he is buried there on St. Helena, and about 19 years later, the British allow his body to be exhumed and taken back to France, and placed into a memorial tomb for important people in military history. He'll die in 1821, likely from stomach cancer. And we talked about that before, that like portraits of him holding like his stomach or in his pocket, in his coat. Sometimes that's just how people posed back then. But it could have been also that he was suffering from stomach cancer. And he was very bloated later in life, and that also could have been from stomach cancer. This is a picture of his tomb in France. Miss Brewer's PowerPoint shows his. Now that's obviously that's still not his. He's not there, but that's just like a still a.
Still,
it the
it's
tomb
like a memorial.
is a memorial. Yeah, it's there on St. Helena. It's just like a memorial that's still there to show where he was buried. In her PowerPoint notes, but this is actually where he is buried today in France. He was married twice. He was married to Josephine. They did not have any children. He married then a young woman who was a daughter of the Emperor of Austria. They had one son. He was died of stomach cancer. The British refused his final wish to be buried on the banks of the Seine. So the body of Europe's most famous emperor was buried underneath 3 stone slabs and 2 droopy willow trees. He was there for nearly 20 years before the British changed their mind. And then he was buried there in Paris. And then we talk here about why does he pose with his hand in his jacket. One theory is that he suffered from ulcer or early stages of stomach cancer, and that was a way to put pressure on the part that was hurting. But some historians believe that it was just a pose that was popular during the time, and it depicted a man of worth and strength. And then I've just found 2 portraits during that time of people who had their hands in their coats like that too. All right, so that is your video today of the rest of Napoleon. And like I said, that PowerPoint doesn't exactly match Miss Brewer's, but that's okay because it's the same material. But her PowerPoints are what you need to look over and take notes on for any test or the quiz that will be in there on Friday. Please, 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 please make sure you're keeping up with everything. There's several assignments in there. There's a storyboard. There's a primary source analysis. There is a like a little Google poster that she did for hero and villain. So please make sure that you are keeping up with everything and not getting behind on any of your work, because it's going to be really, really hard to get caught up. If you have any questions, please make sure that you are emailing me so that we can get you caught up.